More than 24 million Americans have already voted, and the numbers are telling us a very interesting story, Michael Snyder reports. It appears that the outcome of this election is likely to completely shock a lot of experts. I spent quite a bit of time today going through the numbers on the University of Florida's early voting tracker, and I've noticed some very intriguing trends. First of all, turnout is off the charts. In 2020, 49 million Americans voted prior to Election Day. So far, in 2024, a whopping 24,981,629 Americans have already voted, and we still have almost 2 weeks to go until we reach November 5th. There is so much energy on both sides, and both sides fully expect to win. Once it's all over, the losing side is going to experience a flood of negative emotion. Before I begin, I want to mention a few things. Not all states offer early voting, and the states that do offer early voting differ as to what types of data they make available. So the numbers that we have right now do not give us a full picture of what's going on. Also, just because a voter identifies with a particular party, that does not mean that voter will vote a particular way. Some Democrats could be voting for Donald Trump, and some Republicans could be voting for Kamala Harris. But without a doubt, the numbers that we're getting at this stage do tell us a very interesting story. In previous elections, Democrats have voted early at a much higher rate than Republicans have. In 2024, that continues to be true. Democrats, 42.8%, Republican, 34.6%, none or minor is 22.7%. But the big story is that Republicans have really narrowed the gap compared to the last presidential election. Currently, there's only an 8.2% gap between Democrats and Republicans, but in 2020 there was a 14.3% gap. Democrats 22 million some odd, Republicans 15 million some odd, and minor 337,000. No affiliate party, about 11.9 million. The Trump campaign has already been encouraging people to get out and vote early, and it appears that it's working. Another gap that we will want to watch closely is the gap between men and women. So far, women are voting early at a much higher rate than men are. Female 54.3%, male 44.1%, unknown 1.7%. This is potentially a promising sign for Harris because she has far more support among women than she does among men. But when we start looking at specific swing states, there is a ton of bad news for the Harris campaign. For example, Republicans have cast almost 12,000 more votes than Democrats have in Nevada so far. Democrats 36%, Republicans 39.5%, none or minor 24.5%. As I noted yesterday, the Harris campaign is absolutely counting on Nevada, and so these numbers should be very troubling for them. In Arizona, Republicans have built up an even bigger lead. Democrats 36.3%, Republicans 41.9%, none or minor 21.8%. If Harris wants to have any hope of winning Arizona, she's got to turn those numbers around. Colorado also gives us the data on party identification, and the numbers from that state are absolutely stunning. Democrats 31.6%, Republican 28%, none or minor 40.4%. Nobody expects Colorado to be competitive, but Republicans are running very close to Democrats in the early voting numbers so far. If Colorado were to slip away, that would be catastrophic for the Harris campaign. One of the most closely watched swing states is North Carolina. Normally, Democrats would have a very large early voting lead at this stage, but instead it is a very close race. Democrats 34.5%, Republicans 33.9%, none or minor 31.6%. In order for Harris to win North Carolina, she needs African American voters to show up in huge numbers. Unfortunately for Harris, at this point, African American turnout is way down all over the state. The most striking impact is among black voters. So far, there are more than 67,000 fewer African American voters than there were in 2020 at this point in the in-person voting period. That's a huge deficit that Democrats should be scrambling to address. They need to be shifting money and people to connect with black voters and get them to the polls. The problem is widespread. In Durham County, there are 4,500 fewer black voters this year than 4 years ago. In Mecklenburg, the number is 5,000. In Wake, it's a little more than 3,000. In Cumberland, the black vote is down by 5,000. In Guilford, the number is more than 8,500. The problem is apparent in rural counties too. In Wilson County, there are more than 1,000 fewer black voters so far than the same period in 2020. In Halifax County, black vote is also down more than 1,000. Same in Nash County. More than 20% of her African American voters are missing. They could potentially vote later in the process, but there is no guarantee that will happen. In addition, survey after survey has shown that Trump is getting far more support among African Americans than he did in 2020. Many Democrats are extremely concerned about the state of the race because Trump clearly has the momentum at this point. The following comes from the Wall Street Journal. Kamala Harris calls herself the underdog against Donald Trump. Making that argument is an old ploy to motivate voters, but with 2 weeks until Election Day, the Vice President's top advisors and allies are worrying it might be true. Harris has struggled to nail down support from key voting blocs in the Democratic coalition, has left her team unsettled, according to interviews with aides and advisors. She enjoys strong support with women, but she has a clear problem with men, including both black men and white working class men. She also has failed to shore up support among Michigan's Arab Americans, who have been frustrated with the Biden administration's handling of the widening conflict in the Middle East. It's likely that we could witness a scenario on the night of the election where the map looks really good for Trump, and if that is the case, Trump may declare victory before the night is over. Of course, Harris insists that she is ready to fight back if Trump tries to do that. Vice President Kamala Harris, her campaign team, and some of Donald Trump's own allies say they expect the former president to quickly declare victory on election night, even if the outcome is not yet settled in key swing states. Between the time it takes to process mail ballots and deal with provisional ballots in some battleground states, votes will not be fully tabulated on election night. Projections of who won a close presidential race might not come for days, similar to the 2020 election. It's hard to imagine a concession speech by Harris on the night of the election, no matter how bad things look for her campaign. Even if she's losing badly, her campaign will probably insist that it's just a red mirage and that things will turn in her favor once all of the early votes and absentee ballots are counted. Ultimately, the outcome of the election could end up in the courts and drag out for weeks, even if it's obvious that Trump has won. And if Trump does eventually emerge victorious, it will likely result in widespread chaos in our streets. Have you noticed that they've been calling Trump a fascist over and over again this week? The stage is being set for massive civil unrest, and that's extremely unfortunate. This is from Michael Snyder on End of the American Dream. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. About the author, Michael Snyder's new book, Why, is available on paperback and for Kindle on Amazon. He's also written 8 other books available on Amazon, including Chaos, End Times, 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophets in the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters. When you purchase any of Michael's books, you help to support the work that he's doing. You can also get his articles by email as soon as he publishes them by subscribing to his Substack newsletter. Michael has published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and the Most Important News, and he always freely, happily allows others to republish those articles on their own websites. These are such troubled times and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, we strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.